Going live. It's thinking. Okay, you're live.
Yay, we're live. We are live for Dulcimoon Talk number 35, I think it is. My goodness, we've been going for a long time, and I am just delighted. I'm DJ Hamoris, and I'm delighted to be talking with Cyntia Smith. Oh dear, hang on. Give me a moment here. I'm hearing an echo, and I'm going to turn that off. There we go.
I'm
There
not
we
hearing
go.
an echo, so I think you're okay on this end.
All right, thank you, Erin May, Tech Director. Was going to distract me. Anyway, Cyntia Smith, who is in Southern California and is one of the first people I ever heard play mountain dulcimer and sing at, of all things, the Southern California Renaissance Fair. And we were just starting to talk about that. Cyntia, tell us a little bit about the story we were just talking about, how you found the dulcimer.
Well, I after high school and when I was in college in 1978, I had a boyfriend who played bluegrass mandolin, and for Christmas of 1978, he got me a folk roots dulcimer. And then January of 79, I found a flyer for dulcimer lessons, and it was none other than Randy Wilkinson. And I took 6 months of lessons with him, and he started me right out of the gate with chord-melody and Renaissance music and lute music. And within a very short period of time, I was already teaching beginners. And in August of 79, I sought out McCabe's guitar shop in Santa Monica looking to see if I could teach there. And they already had a dulcimer teacher. And I said, well, do they teach, finger picking dulcimer? And they said, yes. And I said, well, who is this? And they said, Ruth Barrett. And so I went to Ruth and for a lesson and found out that my teacher, Randy, was a friend of her teacher, Lori Cole. And so instead of having a lesson, we started jamming. And by November of 79, we were beginning to perform at Cal State Long Beach Renaissance fairs and other gigs like that. And within a year, we were recording our first album, Aeolus, and had started our record label.
Oh my, oh my. Wow. And this was all in the Los Angeles, Santa Monica area?
I was in Long Beach at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
and then I would go up to Ruth's house, and then over the next 20 years, we recorded 5 albums. As I mentioned, Aeolus, and these were the LPs in those days.
Yes.
So I
I
recorded.
have those.
Oh, great, great. So I had Aeolus, and then Music of the Rolling World, Deepening. And
Mm-hmm.
then in 1991, it switched over to CDs, and we did a Dulcimer Harvest, which is the all instrumental
Right.
CD, which we took music from the first 3 albums and then remastered them for instrumentally. Then I wrote another 5 or 6 songs and put that on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then our last album together was The Heart is the Only Nation,
Right.
and that was 1993.
Right. So I always hear your voice singing the song Aeolus when I think of you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. So it's just amazing. So that was a start point. What a start.
And I was going to Long Beach State for a liberal studies degree as a just an elementary school teacher, and to my mother's chagrin, I dropped out in my senior year in the fall of 1980 to start cutting records with Ruth and touring.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't go back to school until 1994.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't had any formal training except for 2 years of piano when I was 15 to 17. But that
Mm-hmm.
was enough to let me know what a chord was and, how to read basic melodies on the staff and things like that and count rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So I guess the dulcimer was my instrument, and I just took off from there.
I have talked to artists, like people who draw and paint and stuff, and all of them have said that it wasn't until they found their medium that they really took off. You
Mhm.
found your medium.
Yes, yes.
Fantastic. And with your voice, so you found yourself writing some music.
Yes, and until I was working with Ruth, I really couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. And as I was, until I learned what intervals were and how to recognize them and things like that, it was a very difficult road to get going on. Ruth
Mhm.
had come from a very musical family, so she had a lot of years of playing and singing and performing, and so I was playing a little catch up there. But instrumentally, I was right up there with her.
Oh yeah, you two were. You were well matched.
Yes,
Definitely well matched. One of the things I remember most fondly is, the Southern California Renaissance Fair, as people might imagine, was pretty darn hot most days.
yes.
And there was a shady grove that had this little rise stage and hay bales to sit on. And I would find you back there performing. And what I found was not just you two, but multiple musicians who were, by the end of fair, at the end of the day, you had a whole band up there, singers and players.
There was a
Uh,
lot going on there.
Well, it was really impressive and really inspiring as well. You two were definitely my inspiration because as a singer, I wanted something to play with, and the dulcimer was in my hands by 79.
Wonderful,
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, yeah. So it's really great. Well, my goodness. So you left school, you started recording and touring, doing
Yes,
it as a profession,
right. And
right? And
teaching
teaching.
individual and ensemble classes, and it was a joy. And however, by the year 2000, Ruth moved out of state, and so I was doing other things. And even before that, I was touring alone and going to places like Swannanoa and the Appalachian State University, Dulcimer Week, and teaching and performing. And I have to tell you that it was at one of those Appalachian State universities that I heard Maddie McNeil sing. And
Oh,
she's deeply missed, but
yes.
it literally brought me to my knees as I was waiting backstage to go on.
Oh,
It was just so inspiring, and how she blended her extraordinary voice with her instruments was just quite an inspiration to me. And I have to also say Ruth was a great inspiration to me too, because like I say, didn't have any formal training, and the music that she was bringing forward, the mythological content, the British Isles, Celtic, seasonal songs and things like that was just exciting and wonderful, and harken back to my childhood where my maternal grandparents taught and performed international folk dance. So there was a lot of folk music, and also my grandmother, who was an abstract expressionist artist by the name of Grace Sorensen Dimmick, was well known in giving one-woman shows in Long Beach. She was also an amateur mythologist, so I had books on the shelf as a child looking at things like Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, and all wonderful books of mythology, which really piqued my interest. So by the time I met Ruth in 1979, all this background coalesced, and we started writing and performing and selecting songs that featured women in strong roles, and no songs about women as victims, but as leaders and heroines. And it was very empowering for me, as well as what I heard from the audience as well.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. Many of those songs run through my head, and I've learned to sing some of them myself. I love "Blow the Candles Out."
Yes.
That's one of my favorite. I
Yeah.
really love that. And
Very.
the other thing I love that you folks did was to take a familiar tune and write different lyrics to it.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
We would often take a public domain piece, like Bird on the Briar is Don Ihe Uchen Beitel, a Gaelic melody, which is something I think that night in Bethlehem.
Hmm.
But we wrote words for basically a whole nother song. And
Yes.
we would do that. Another one was Lovers of the Moon, which is a 14th century O Virgo Splendens melody.
Mm-hmm.
And we wrote in that style. We
Yes.
would get people who could help us, write in the dialect if we needed to, and so it was just really fascinating and just a whole discovery process as we were doing that.
Hmm. It was very much a part of, as far as I was concerned, the women's spirituality movement.
Yes, yes.
Your music was definitely what do we saw? Movie track, right? A soundtrack to a lot of those gatherings and people singing together or using those songs as part of their their rituals, their ceremonies, their Unitarian church services,
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was wonderful.
It was actually, quite an honor to be embraced by a whole lot of different groups of people. We had fans from 8 years old to their 80s and all kinds of backgrounds and persuasions and things and it was really a wonderful um, experience to
Good.
have people embrace our music in that way.
I'm glad to hear that. Are all these recordings still available?
Yes, they are. They're available through CD Baby or Amazon and all that kind of thing. But they're also available on my website, which is cynthiasmith.com.
Right. And I really want to emphasize there's no H in that Cynthia.
That's Cynthia. Yes,
Yeah,
Cynthia Smith.
Cynthia. And Aaron May will put that in the chat so that people can find you online.
Great. And I just want to mention too, since the first three albums, Aeolus, Music of the Rolling World, and Deepening, were on LP. Most of those albums were collected and put on a long CD called The Early Years, so they can look for that there.
Okay, okay, that's great. I highly recommend all of them for dulcimer players, and especially people who like to sing with their dulcimer, because it'll inform your ears um, as to how the whole chord melody fingerpicking style got very prevalent in the 70s and 80s,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. So from there, you met Dale Foye. Dale Foye?
Boy, yes.
Foye,
So,
okay.
uh, hearkening back to when I just got the dulcimer, I went into a music shop in Long Beach called the World of Strings, where they sold and repaired stringed instruments. And Mr. Foy was working there, and I was taking some theory lessons on the dulcimer and trying to, move a little forward on that. And I was learning about modes. And I was taking from a jazz guitarist by the name of Horace Hatch, and he saw the dulcimer and immediately recognized its modal quality and had me learning about the modes and playing through.
Wonderful.
And as I was leaving one day, Mr. Foy said to me, "Hey, would you like to make a handmade version of the dulcimer?" Because I was using a nice folk roots dulcimer, and he was a classical guitar builder as well as a repair person there. And I said, "Sure." And then by a few years later, we got together and we co-created the Aeolus classical dulcimer, which is a hybrid between the classical guitar, the Spanish classical guitar, and the mountain dulcimer. And
Wow.
so I brought to that endeavor my requirements as a musician, you know, that how it needs to be set up, how it needs to sound, how it needs to feel, all those things. And he brought the construction aspect of the classical guitar into the mix. And we formed Aeolus Instruments in 1984. But before then, he helped, or actually, I helped him build Ruth and I a pair of twin dulcimers
Aw,
that he gave to us and
wow.
to further our career. And so by 1982, on the Music of the Rolling World album, we were now using Aeolus dulcimers. We're
Mhm.
on the first record we were using folk roots instruments, and then I started teaching myself how to do the abalone and mother of pearl inlay and carving the sound hole rosettes on the Aeolus dulcimers, as well as doing inlay for his classical guitars on the headstock and fretboards and things like that. And I
Wow.
have an example here.
Please, yes.
Okay. So I don't know if you can see this, but it
There we
a
go. That's good.
has a humpback whale on the headstock, a mom and a baby, and it has Castor and Pollux right here, the stars, and the Big Dipper,
Uh-huh.
and then it has a mermaid with many colors of shell, her hair in gold mother of pearl, whole body in white mother of pearl, and then her tail in the heart of abalone and things like that. And then the sound holes are I carved out of a disc of rosewood, and they're little mermaids sitting in the sound
Oh,
holes.
beautiful.
Thank you. And you may be able to see it that it has a classical guitar style look to it, a
Mhm.
bowed back, slightly bowed.
Mm,
Braces are bowed a little bit, and it has the guitar stock, headstock type feature here.
right. And you have 6 strings.
This was made for a gentleman who lived on a boat and wrote a rubber check. And we were just very lucky to get it back as they were leaving town. And so now I have it. And what was so funny is that when I was doing the custom work for him, he said, I want you to do whatever inlays and sound holes that you want to do, what you would like.
Oh,
And back in 92, I was really into mermaids. So this was born and it came back home. And so
yeah.
it's been a joy to have it back.
Do you play it as a 6 string?
I actually changed the extra set of slots to be able to accept bass strings. So on the Dulcimer Harvest recording, there's some songs in there that have me taking off the treble strings and putting on bass strings and using it as a bass dulcimer on some of the tracks. So
Wow.
as people may hear when they hear the music on our records, is that it's multi-layered.
Hmm.
But when we performed, it's still polyphonic in that we have the 6 strings between us, but we're playing different parts. We're going, moving from melody to one counter melody and going to another counter melody and just doing these layers. And then, of course, singing and playing at the same time. And it was a lot of fun and just exciting. And when we did the recordings, we also made sure that we brought in wonderful musicians who would be playing harp, like Sylvia Woods on harp, and different things like that. Renaissance drums, cello, bowed bass, flutes, and all kinds of things like that. So, and I want to give a plug to our engineer. His name is Scott Fraser, and many may know him from his work with the Kronos Quartet
Hmm.
and the Alman Folk Ensemble. Fabulous recording technician and a dear person. And so when we made these albums, he did his best to capture the acoustic quality of the instruments and just did a wonderful job.
That is not something every engineer can do.
Right.
Right. Right. Just trying to make sure that my dulcimer gets mic'd correctly is hard enough.
Yes, it is.
It's very hard. Yes. Well, all of this is fabulous. You could have stopped there, but you didn't, did you?
No, I actually, in 1994, I decided that I ought to get some music education, and I went to a junior college, Golden West College, junior college out here in Huntington Beach, and I took music classes for the very first time, and voice class with Professor Henrietta Carter helped me tune my voice in more. I had a wonderful theory teacher, Professor Roseanne Wood, who
Mm.
was the artist in residence at that time, and she recognized that my music was therapeutic, and she was the one who helped me move toward music therapy. With her instruction in music theory, I was able to pass the test into Chapman University in their music department, and graduated there in 1999 with a bachelor's in music with emphasis in music therapy. And then by
Wow.
2000, I became a board certified music therapist.
You know, you're one of many that we've talked to, of the women, of the 35 women we've talked to. You're one of at least 4 people so far who do music therapy as part of what they do.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great. Yeah.
yeah, I think that the dulcimer does lend itself to that. And also, in the case of Lorinda Jones, she is also a harpist. I would say the harp is probably her main instrument. I'm not sure, but she's been doing the music therapy also. If you have a chance to watch her
I
talk, you might
did I
appreciate it.
did see her
Oh,
her
good,
her Dulcimoon talk, and been talking to her over the years here and there
good,
about that, and she let me know that she's a music therapist as
good,
well.
good. But it's just, it seems to really lend itself to music therapeutic
Mhm.
applications. How did you find that working for you as you were going into the field?
Well, I used the dulcimer in my music therapy in the field work process, and also as after I became board certified. One of the things I found in working with folks in Alzheimer um, group homes from early diagnosis to hospice is that the dulcimer was very accessible. And even in late stages, you could put it on their lap and help them strum it. And
Mhm.
you could see them wake up and be very pleased. And I remember playing the dulcimer and singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and family members were there for this one uh, client, and the client recognized her family members while that was being played because it
Wow.
was reaching and activating the long-term memory, which is one of the last things to go in the Alzheimer's disease process. So there was a connection with the family, and the client was like, why is your hair gray? Because, she's seeing them back when before the disease had progressed to the point she didn't recognize them. And so there
Mm.
were some just really beautiful moments where um, that that connection happened. And another one that was particularly touching to me was I was in a hospital in a what they call a partial psych setting where I was using the dulcimer, and a gentleman had become a paraplegic due to a gunshot wound
Mm.
in a argument, and only had the use of his forearm slightly and one finger, and I devised a way to velcro a noter onto his finger, put the dulcimer on his lap, and I had him just move what he could do and strum and sing to him. He was of Hispanic descent, so I sang something, an old Sephardic a song that I knew, and he had been very depressed and didn't want to tell anybody what had happened to him. And I found out that he was later discharged because he realized that he could have a similar device to go back and get back into video editing with sort of a noter on his hand.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that was like, wow, that's really great,
That's fantastic. So that's a therapeutic application that
of the dog.
assisted them
Yeah.
to to assisted him to live a life that he wanted to live.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can see why you like this.
Yeah. And I gotta say, the dulcimer is my music therapy. It's my method of self-medicating, so to speak. And it is a huge part of my life for decades now, and I can't imagine it not being in my life.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. You know, one of the aging things that happens to many people is, physical things like arthritis. And I finally got to the point where I have enough arthritis that I had to stop knitting. It was either knitting or dulcimer. Well, it was very clear to me the knitting was going to go because the dulcimer is always part of my life. It has
Yeah,
to be.
yeah, it has to be. Yes,
Yeah, it has to be. Exactly. If I've got a cold, I can still play.
that's right. Right.
That's right. That's right. Wow.
So, I also did some other things in there. So in 1994, when I was starting at Golden West College, I was also starting co-founding a group called the Southern California Dulcimer Heritage. And with this group of people who joined me, we created the Harvest Festival of Dulcimers. And I was the artistic director for that from 1984 to about 2006. And so I was able to invite all my friends on the Dulcimer, you know, to come and play the festival, and also learned about other instruments and the ukulele for one, is I play a little bit of ukulele and guitar, and that was a joyous time for me too. Was having my friends come and play and be part of that festival.
Hmm. And
So
that festival has moved through the pandemic and into the almost post-pandemic time. I'm not sure we're quite post-pandemic, but by doing some events, not just online, but also some in person. And I think they've experimented with some hybrid, right? Where some people are in person and some are on Zoom.
I don't know. I In 2006 I started my master's PhD program. So
Uh-huh.
I was invited back for their
Hmm.
20th anniversary festival, and that was in person at that
Okay.
time. And
Okay.
and then in 2022 I was invited to do a performance online, uh,
Hmm.
and I played with my the gentleman who played guitar on my Soul Tending album, uh,
Mm.
George Gilliam, who's a professional jazz guitarist.
Hmm. So
And
Soul Tending album. This is the first we've heard of this here.
okay, that's right. You were talking before, yes. So I went to Pacifica Graduate Institute, where they have the personal library of mythologist Joseph Campbell. I was always interested in mythology, and the program I chose with mythological studies, with an emphasis in depth psychology, which is the psychological theories of the psychologist Carl Jung. And so I wanted to bring music and music therapy into the conversation of tending soul. And we studied all kinds of world mythologies, religions, literature, all these types of things. And one of the things that I noticed was that music was mentioned in passing. And I understand that there are many canons, the Bible, the Torah, and different things like that, the Quran, and other things around the world. But I thought music itself is a canon for spirituality. And so I wanted to talk about how music can be used for individual soul tending, or the psychological harmonization,
Mhm.
and as well as cultural soul tending.
Mm.
So I did an album of almost entirely my compositions, and that was the production component to my dissertation called Music, Myth, and Soul Tending. And then that was completed in 2011. And then the album came out commercially, so to speak, published in 2014, called Soul Tending. And it has one of the things I was drawing upon was different mythologies and how music was used, from uh, the hymn to Saint Bridget, and also the Lakota spirit dances, also known as ghost dance, and studying the lyrics and the melodies, which were collected by a woman named Natalie Curtis in her book called The Indians Book. She was a classical pianist,
Mhm.
and she went around to 18 different tribes and transcribed their music and the
Wow.
words and the mythology. And so I found in the Joseph Campbell Archive Library at Pacifica Graduate Institute, I found that book and realized I can um, do a lyric analysis and a tonal analysis of what was the feeling tone of the music. And so all those different types of things were in the dissertation, and many of them were illustrated on the CD. But the CD is also, I wouldn't say that it's a dry type of thing. It's really my own soul tending, shared through the CD.
Yeah. And I listened to a little bit of it just before we got on. And one of the things, besides it being really beautiful and the performance being so lovely, is that the recording itself is so crisp, so clean. You can really hear it. It's as if you're in the room. And I really appreciate that. That means that whoever was recording, was it Fraser again?
It was Scott Fraser.
There
Yeah.
you go.
There
That's
you go.
why.
That's
You
why.
already have a good relationship. And this is the thing about musicians when we're recording. We need to feel we're in good hands.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Yes.
And he really would take his time with me, and of course I put the time in beforehand, getting ready before
Of
going into the
course.
studio. And but he had wonderful suggestions, and he was also there was a lot of give and take and back and forth, and him taking things where I needed to go a little more here or there,
Mhm.
volumes and levels and different things like that. And so he is a master engineer, and I'm so grateful to have had that chance to work with him over the years.
It's fabulous to have someone that you can really count on to go back to time and time again.
Yes.
Good for you. It's one of the great things about staying in the same area for a long time is you get to know who you can depend on for, you know, if you need a pedal steel guitarist, you can find them among your own group of musical friends and their references, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's great.
We had,
So,
many referrals from Scotty too. So,
of course, of course. So, does he end up being the producer for you, or are you the producer?
well, I'm the main producer, but the earlier albums he was co-producer with Ruth and I,
Mm-hmm.
and as well as on the Soul Tending album, he was co-producer on that.
Yeah.
And also, my friend George Gilliam was playing guitar, and we worked out a lot of things together as well.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. So, so now you've gone through all of this. You've got your dissertation done. You've got your PhD, Dr. Smith, which is really nothing to laugh at, but it's certainly something to not take too seriously as yourself, right? It's a lot of work to get to that point and a lot of accomplishment.
Yes.
And then you step into what?
Well, actually, I in after I got my board certification, I began to work at a fine arts, music and fine arts, actually therapeutic music and fine arts day program for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I started out as a independent contractor teaching the dulcimer, and today I'm the program director and clinical training director, and I it's a wonderful, it's can be challenging, but it's a wonderful profession to be able to help adults um, play music, perform music, be part of the cultural dialogue, and to make art and exhibit their art, and again be recognized for creative and contributing members of society.
Mhm. Mhm. This is, I think that's one of the things that many music teachers and art teachers, teachers of creativity are basically proponents of self-expression, right?
Mhm.
And doing that as opposed to consuming music is a different thing.
It
It,
is.
it provides a different sort of reward.
Yes, and we know from music therapy research, and particularly the work of Dr. Dale B. Taylor in his book, Music as a Foundation of Music Therapy. I think I have the title not quite right, but he describes how the human brain is wired for music,
Mm.
and hence it is a perfect medium to assist people with changing habits or changing the way they think, and also to help their physiology. It's used in hospitals, pre-surgery and post-surgery. It's used for recovery and stroke. Many of you may remember when Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot in the head, and they thought that she would never speak or walk again. And it was actually a music therapist specializing in neurology that helped her begin first to hum and then sing and then speak, and with rhythmic auditory stimulation to do gait training and recover her ability to walk and talk. So it's music is an amazing thing, and it's a particularly human thing, as in the way we apply it.
Mhm. So you've seen and researched a lot around this subject.
Yeah, I think it's, it's all around. If you look for it, you can see it. And when um, this is the tip of the iceberg as
Oh
far as
yeah.
the application of music therapy, and I think it's the tip of the iceberg of what the dulcimer can contribute to music therapy as well.
Why the dulcimer specifically?
I think it's because it's so accessible and a different novel, and it is easy to learn to play it in a basic manner.
Mhm.
When I was working with teenage girls who were removed from the home for abuse and neglect, and some of them had children, um, I worked there teaching them lullabies and also singing to them lullabies, because many of them were neglected and abused themselves, and learning to sing lullabies to soothe themselves and to soothe their children, and also to help them have a way to express themselves. And so in the time I was there, we were able to pull together a little concert that they could do for the rest of their teachers and other people at the facility. And
The healing is the doing, and the healing is also just listening, participating at that level.
Mhm.
So all of it. Music is powerful.
Yes, indeed.
It really is.
And it's a the dulcimer can be a lifelong learning tool as well. In recent years, I took up the chromatic dulcimer, and
Mm.
which I have one right here, an Aeolus dulcimer.
Oh, good.
It has all the Has
All the
all the
frets.
frets. This one has pierce cut work for the sound hole rosettes that I
Beautiful.
did. And it's been a challenge, but it's also been a joy.
It is a challenge. I'm in that challenge myself these days.
One of the things I'm working with is composing on it as well as transcribing interesting things. I've been doing some Francisco Tarraga on it, and like Lagrima and Adelita, which are typically classical guitar standards. And
Mm.
it falls very beautifully on the instrument.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, this is amazing. I'm so delighted to see you sitting there smiling so happily. Erin, do we have any questions or comments
There were a
for?
couple of questions in the chat. One about whether the Aeolus dulcimers are still available. It sounds like maybe not, but if you want to speak to that. And then there's a couple people who as every time we talk about music therapy, are interested in sort of like finding resources for using the dulcimer in music therapy. And it seems like the people we've talked to, they sort of learn the music therapy side and then find the way to integrate the dulcimer into it. But if you've got any recommended resources.
Well, I would say going to the American Music Therapy Association, which I think is musictherapy.org, and looking into how to become a music therapist. It is really a good idea to have several years of being a musician of some level and being able to sing before you want to try getting into music therapy. And as far as the dulcimer, for me, it was very experimental. I tried many different ways to present the instrument, have the instrument on a hospital bed and strumming it for them, or putting it on the lap and or just playing for them. And so it's sort of an experimental type of thing and how to use it. And I think if you are a kind of person who wants to help people and can already play the dulcimer, um, and you want to go into music therapy, I think that's a wonderful idea. And there's a lot of room for it. So let's say,
Okay.
because of its novelty, it's going to get people's attention,
Right.
which is the first place you have to go is to have them be attending to what you're presenting.
Right. Right.
And as far as the Aeolus dulcimer, Mr. Foye retired from instrument making in 2022, and he's not making any anymore. But they are sometimes they available on eBay or things like that. Or people do sell some. He
Mhm.
also has a lot of classical guitars, flamenco guitars, and ukuleles out there as well. And so once in a blue moon, they will come up, but there aren't any being made, and the ones I have aren't going anywhere. So
You already have in your will where they're going when you're done, right? When you can't play them anymore.
I will be doing that, yes.
Well, I hopefully that'll be a long time from now. It seems like you're living a life that you're enjoying, that you feel like you're doing what is useful for your skills and your community.
I feel very blessed that I have this opportunity to have music in my life, both in my work and my personal life. And I look forward to getting more involved again in the dulcimer world. And I invite people to contact me on my website. We can talk more that way, and check out the music and just keep playing the dulcimer and just have fun with it.
That's right. Keep strumming,
Keep strumming.
picking and strumming. Thank you so much for your time today and for allowing me to kind of fangirl.
I'm deeply appreciative of this opportunity. I just
Oh,
want to
good.
thank you so much.
Good. So just so everybody knows, this talk will be available at the same link that's live streamed. So You can go ahead and share that with your friends, or anybody who's watched this can share it with their dulcimer friends, and it'll be available on YouTube and also at the dulcimoon.com website. We archive all of them on the website so that you can just go there and see what else we're doing. But we do these talks about twice a month, and we're hoping we'll have another wonderful woman in the dulcimer world to speak with later in March. Thanks again, Cynthia.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye, folks.
Bye-bye.